The world champion strikes back. Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix to achieve his dream. Up goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton. Lando Norris wins for the first time in Formula One. He's out around the outside. He's run out of road. It's lights out and away we go.
Alright everybody, welcome to the first episode of, what are we calling it? F-It. So with the F1 in the middle. Yeah, that's right. We don't know what we're doing. We may be inadvertently stealing some stuff. We don't know. But we're also not making any money right now, so it's not like you can claim we're doing anything super illegal. Hopefully they'll give us a cease and desist before they take any actual action. So anyway, enough of that stuff. F-It, the Formula One podcast with your hosts Neil
and Bekah.
Curtis. So I have been a big time Formula One fan. Well, I don't want to say big time, but I have been a Formula One fan off and on for, what does that add up to? 20-ish years now. Almost 25 years now. I got into it back when I was in high school, and those were the Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen days of yore at this point. Back then, people talked about Niki Lauda, James Hunt, Jackie Stewart, Ayrton Senna, like I talk about David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen and Michael Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve. Those guys who were racing when I was in high school. Got out of it for a little while, and then we had the opportunity to live in Germany for a few years not too long ago, and rekindled F1, and coincided quite nicely with Netflix's Drive to Survive. So
Definitely.
for me, that was great because I had no idea who was racing at that point. It had been well over 10 years. Everybody was gone. And so I didn't know who the teams were anymore. I didn't know who the racers were. So that first season, Drive to Survive was actually really good. Actually, it was just really good. It was a lot better than most of the other ones.
Yeah.
And really gave you like a jumping point to get back into the sport. For me to get back into it. And then eventually got my family to start getting into it.
Yeah.
I went to my first Formula One race right out of high school. It was a graduation gift. We got to take a little summer vacation trip right after I graduated, and we went up to Montreal, Canada, and got to see the Canadian Grand Prix.
Oh,
Super awesome. Ferrari did not do too well. Schumacher did not do well at all. I don't think he completed the race. So as far as results go, it wasn't that great, but it was a really fun trip overall. I had a very fun time. And then Rebecca, when did you start watching and going to Formula One?
I went to 2 races before I really started watching Formula One.
Dad drug her. No, dragged her, not drugged her. And then put pills in her. Put cough syrup in her juice or anything like that, juice bottle. So, but you were what, like 5?
6.
You were
We
6?
went to the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2015 when I was 6 years old, and then we went to Germany 2019 when I was 10.
The Hockenheim,
yeah. And I remember that race really clearly. But F1 wasn't really anything I was super into until this past 2024 season. I started really sitting down and watching it, and I've gotten really into it over the past year.
Yeah. So I hope like last season was actually pretty exciting. It wasn't just Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton stomp on everybody's faces and take the world championship. It was a lot more mixed up. Had a lot more winners on the podium, and so that was a good season. I think last year to really, if you were new to it, to kind of get into it and actually start to enjoy what is Formula One. So
yeah, a bunch of different contenders made it really fun to figure out who exactly I really thought was going to win this year, and who seemed like they were going to be really strong this year based on last year.
Who you wanted to cheer for, despite knowing there was no chance in the world they were going to win the championship, much less maybe a race.
Listen. You might go to Red Bull.
All right,
we're gonna talk about
favorite team, favorite drivers.
My teams are McLaren and Bekah, and my favorite drivers are Ollie Behrman and Yuki Tsunoda.
Cool. So when I was in high school, I really got into Ferrari. Just kind of jumped on board the mainstream team. They weren't actually winning a whole lot the first year or two that I watched. They went on a good streak, and then Michael Schumacher, big favorite of mine. Again, yeah, he was winning quite a bit. He wasn't winning a lot. He had hit his what was that 6 or 7 year streak of absolute dominance, but he was winning. He and Hakkinen were having a really good go of it back and forth in the championship. That first year, I really started paying attention to the races, getting up early, because mind you, this was back in the day when you didn't have on demand, you didn't have YouTube TV.
This is how we watch it now. Makes it so much easier.
You could record it, you set your VCR. Literally, you set your VCR to record, and you could record it. Yeah. Sometimes ABC or ESPN might have a replay of the race later in the day, but sometimes you just had to get up 3 in the morning to watch the race. And
we tried that and we failed. One of my brothers and I got up for the Chinese Grand Prix, got up at 3 a.m. and we were both asleep by lap 30, and we woke up after the race had ended, went back to keep watching it because it was all recorded and saved, and by lap 37 we were like, we can't do this, man, because it was like 5 a.m. and we were like, we gotta go to sleep.
All right, and so really got into Ferrari back then. Yeah, they were the winning team. Schumacher was winning a lot of races, and so yeah, it was probably a little bandwagony. But the more I watched it too, the more I just really liked Schumacher. Schumacher was like take no prisoners, hold nothing back kind of driver. One of my favorite memories is him and Mika Hakkinen kind of going at it in a more gentlemanly way. One of their more gentlemanly arguments, where Hakkinen was with his hands trying to describe hey, if you're here and I'm here, you have to give way. And Schumacher's just looking like, there's no way on this planet I'm going to give way to you. You're absolutely crazy. And it's just that's just the way Schumacher drove. That's the way he raced. And he wasn't going to hold back. And there was a reason why he was so successful. I just really liked his mentality. But he was also in the end, he was also very humble, I thought, in a lot of ways. I've read and seen things afterwards where people who were working with him, people who knew him well, knew that he was always kind of, I won't call it a complex, but always thought that he needed to be better. That he wasn't there yet. He needed to perform better the next race because there were more people who were coming and wanted to win, and so he couldn't just relax and say, nope, I'm the best driver out here, I'm going to win the race. It was, no, I'm not personally good enough, gifted enough to just do this. I need to actually throw myself into this and make sure I take this seriously every time. So I really appreciate that about his style and his racing. And then
I think we're kind of seeing some of that with Max now, especially since clearly took the championship last year, but he really had to get his elbows out fighting Lando last year, I think, or at least part of it, because he had a very long winless streak, and he was really getting excited again about winning, and like when he won Brazil, he was so excited, and like that was something people hadn't seen from Verstappen in a while because he had gotten so used to winning races.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of get away from it, and you kind of start to take it for granted a little bit sometimes, and then you get away from it, and really comes back to you once you finally get it back. But then when I got back into it was that 2019? So because I think the Netflix was a recap of 2018. Found out about the Haas F1 team, American-based team, and was really excited to see that there were no American teams, no American drivers when I was watching, when I was younger and watching. So to see a American-based team racing and competing and having done well the first couple seasons, I was very excited about that. So, and then the fact that they were powered by Ferrari helped out even more, I think.
Definitely.
To be honest. And so I really got behind them. I still love Ferrari. I think they're probably my number one team, but Haas is right up next to them. I mean, I don't like to be one of these people who like pulls for 3 or 4 teams. I like to have a team and pull for them, but I really enjoy following Haas, even though they struggle and they've last year was a good year, but the 2 or 3 years before that were just absolute struggles, and sometimes that almost makes it that much better to cheer for them and pull for them, knowing that they're fighting for it, they're struggling, and you're not cheering for them just because they keep winning all the time, but you're cheering for them and following them because you actually enjoy the team, and you're kind of proud of the team and what they're doing. So I really got into them. I honestly I can't sit and say I have a favorite driver at this point. Like I said, I really enjoyed Schumacher back in the day, but at this point, I'm excited. Lewis Hamilton is on Ferrari.
I think you're very equally pulling for Hamilton and Leclerc this year.
Yeah, probably. I think pretty torn. I think Leclerc's kind of one of those paid his dues type of people. He's worked his rear end off. He works really, really hard. He literally, I don't know how many times I've heard him in a Netflix or just in any kind of interview. He gets up in the morning to compete for a world championship. That's his purpose and goal. So I really respect him and how hard he works and what he puts into it. But Hamilton is just one of those drivers that very talented, incredibly good, but also just the more you see him interact with our people, with fans, you just realize that he's just a really good human being, a really decent person as well, and you enjoy that. I used to hate it a couple of years ago when it was him and Sebastian Vettel. So Vettel, I really did like. I really liked Vettel and his racing and how he did stuff, and then him and his competition with Hamilton. For those, I think 19 and 20 in particular, was tough. Because Hamilton is one of those, to me, one of those types of people who, you want to dislike him because he's your favorite driver's main competitor, but at the same time, he's such a great, person, personally, such a great human being that you're I can't hate this guy because he's actually a really good dude. So that was a struggle. And then I always liked Sainz when he was racing for Ferrari. I think he's incredibly talented. And then Hülkenberg is just one of my favorites, just because I always liked a good German driver. Another guy who's put in a lot of work, has been around for a while. Unfortunately, probably not getting a podium anytime soon.
Continuing the hunt though.
Yeah, and but out of those guys, these are people I just like. I've grown to like a lot of their stories and who they are. I got drivers I don't like. I won't say it just yet, but I got drivers I'm just I really don't care about that guy. But there's just a good handful of drivers that I really respect them. I really think they're great drivers, and I hope they do well. But I don't think I can say I have a specific driver at this point that I really have that I really get behind and cheer for. It probably is a toss up though between Hamilton and Leclerc.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, about each of those guys, and what I respect about each of those guys, and them being on Ferrari help a lot. But
they're both going for a lot this year, both trying to get the championship this year.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be very interesting just based on their results so far.
Yeah.
Based on, like, the stuff they've had go on with the car and everything.
Yeah. We can start talking about that too now.
Yeah.
So a couple races in, we're finally up and on the air. I think originally we had thought about trying to do this like after every race or before the next race. So, for example, in this past doubleheader weekend, we would have done it last Wednesday, right after the Australian Grand Prix and right before the Chinese Grand Prix or Grand Prix of China, however you want to call that. And then, so we could give like a recap and preview type of deal.
Yeah.
But I think what we might do is we might try to look at these. A lot of these races it looks like are set up in clusters. So we might do it after each cluster of races. We'll see how it goes today on the next group of races. If that works out very well, or if we find that even this afternoon we were talking about a little bit the Australian Grand Prix, and we were a little bit on the struggle bus to remember what had happened. Like a whole lot happened.
A whole lot has
in
happened.
that first race in Australia.
But then a lot happened at China.
Well, sort of. I have my own thoughts, but
a lot of post-race stuff.
And yeah, so a lot happened in Australia, and at this point, it's over a week and a half ago. We've got China fresh in our minds, so all that stuff, kind of bumped out the Australia stuff. So we'll see. We might just end up doing it after each race, but we do expect Wednesday nights, probably in the 8 to 9 o'clock range, once a week, or not once a week, but once every week or so. So that's it. We'll start talking about the races. So the Australian Grand Prix. What do you think, Rebecca? Hot or not?
I definitely very hot. Like I was like, think we said like 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would you give it out of 10? 10 being like, that was the best race. That was a great race. Loved it. Best I've ever seen. 1 being like, I fell asleep on lap 33 and couldn't wake back up.
Okay. Definitely like solid 8 for me. There was a lot that went on, I think, in terms of a lot of like the more midfield teams. There was a lot of chaos with the rain.
Yeah. So then, what are your like 3 big takeaways, big thoughts from Australia?
Definitely props to Oscar Piastri for getting back in the race. Like, completely, like, amid all the chaos, like...
Didn't he do it twice?
He went off once and then completely...
and then come back on.
He, like, veered off a bit. Like, both McLarens went off, and then Oscar completely spun out onto the grass towards the end. And he dropped all the way down to the bottom, which admittedly wasn't that far at that point, since we lost, 6 cars in that race?
Oh, yeah. We were down 20 to, I think, 6. Yeah, by the very end, I think it was 14.
Yeah.
Finished.
Because we lost Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and Gabriel Bortoleto. So, that's 6 cars out.
All right, so first is props to Oscar. Well, so what's the second thing? Or second big thought?
I think really amazing that Lando started off leading the world championship.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people know that it's the first time in over 1,000 days that someone besides Max Verstappen led the World Drivers' Championship. So, again, only 2 races in, still kind of too early to tell, but very strong start from Lando in particular.
I feel like, too, similar to qualifying, if you get in the front, then you stay in the front through the race. Like, hopefully it does. And China was a bit dicey, but hopefully it doesn't.
Little bit.
What's the word? Bottle this start.
Bottle the starts, yeah.
From the season, but I do like once you're up in the front, if you keep finishing high, scoring points, it can be difficult to get overtaken in the points.
Yeah.
So
unless like you have a very like long streak of not scoring very well,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, you get a couple of
DNFing.
DNFs, and that can,
Yeah.
you know,
like if Max
Get you caught up,
Verstappen, if
but-
Max Verstappen had a couple more of those last year, it would have been Lando's year last
no,
year.
yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
But he just kept finishing inside the points too many times and like
Yeah,
kept himself up there.
built too much of a lead. All right, so what's your last thing?
Ollie Behrman.
Oh, what?
Yeah. It's a very difficult weekend for him. Like, it was definitely roller coaster of emotions for me, as he's like my favorite driver. And it was kind of shocking given how he had like 2 very strong races out of the 3 he did in F1 last year. Of course, Brazil didn't go very well. Brazil was a bit similar to Australia for him last year. Like, he spun out, I think, 3 times in Brazil last year.
Mm-hmm.
But then
So is Australia similar to Brazil?
it was similar in the way that he finished at the bottom, but still like 14th because of all the cars that crashed out. Australia was a more extreme version of Brazil for him because he crashed out in practice 1. He had... Okay, listen. Yeah, crashed out practice 1. Couldn't keep going in practice 2, or didn't really get... I forget if he didn't really get a good result or just had to stop.
I think you...
No, I think it was a pattern. I think it was crash...
He crashed out.
It was crash in 1, couldn't participate in practice 2, and it was kind of funny because he was the first car out there every single time, and then every single time it's like, sorry, man. Like, couldn't participate practice 2, and then practice 3, crashed again, couldn't participate in qualifying.
Okay, it was 3 crash, okay.
Yeah. Oh, and so did Lawson. I forgot about that.
Alright. So, Behrman, rough weekend, huh?
Very rough start in the Haas. And then, forget how Ocon did, because definitely his practices weren't.
Oh, he was right
super
down there at the bottom.
promising.
So, obviously, you said qualifying. Behrman didn't get a chance to qualify, so he never set a time. So he started from the pit because they did the change out, right? Did they do a change out, or was it just a pit because he never recorded the time? But
I think he started because he didn't. I think that also because they had to repair stuff.
And then Ocon started in last, 19th. So, and then the final results were the same thing.
Very bottom for
Behrman
Haas,
was 14th, Ocon 13th. So
which sounds not terrible, but
when
when you
the
take
last 2 places, that is pretty bad.
yeah.
So, yeah. So my 3 things would be Haas's troubles, because if you were following along in the off season, you saw like Haas bringing in a lot of new stuff. Right at the end of last season, they brought in Toyota Gazoo Racing, so really great partnership there. I think will pay dividends for them. Bringing in some extra funding. It's already paying off. They're able to fund their own wind tunnel now, which is something they haven't had of their own now. And then extra money to allow them to do some additional off-season testing that they haven't been able to do in the past. So you saw a lot more activity coming from Haas in the off-season, like to where like literally in the previous seasons they were not getting in a car and running practice laps until the season opened up, where many of the teams would be taking their previous gen cars and taking them out for laps, which granted you're not getting this exact same feel of the new car, but the drivers are getting that experience and getting back into a car. Honestly, it's going like 150, 160 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that on a consistent basis, it's going to take you a while to get back into that rhythm and like get back into that physical shape, being able to withstand those forces. So the fact that they were able this season to actually start an off-season regimen before the season opened up. But then to start off on such a terrible foot for that first race was really kind of shocking to me. I was not expecting it to be quite that bad. I didn't think they were going podium or anything.
Yeah.
But I thought they had a shot at least a couple points. And then I think on top of that, you throw in Alpine. Pierre Gasly looked pretty good for the most part. He did finish 11th, but he still looked fairly decent. And then Kick Sauber, obviously a very surprise finish there for Nico Hulkenberg, but
finished ahead of both Ferrari drivers.
Yeah, no, that's my second point actually, is once again the Ferrari racing strategy was completely bungled. Ferrari with the opportunity to get their drivers in before rain hit and get them on appropriate tires, but they didn't. And so other cars got onto the intermediates when rain was coming. And so once they actually hit, the Ferrari drivers couldn't stay on the pace, obviously. And so then they had to come in for intermediates and just lost a lot of position at that point. So really just, I think they had been running like 3 and 4 through most of this race. And then finished in 8 and 10. Kind of a disappointing debut for Lewis Hamilton as well. Another shocking thing too, the fact that Ferrari started off looking to have some pretty good pace. I think in the first practice they were towards the top in the top 5. Yeah. Leclerc was 3. Hamilton was a little down there, 12. But then practice 2, Leclerc was on top. Hamilton moved up to 5, so Ferrari was starting to come on pretty strong. Looked to have some pretty good pace, but then as the practice 3 rolled on and qualifying, and then obviously the race itself, Ferrari just fell off the pace after that. I don't know if they tried to get too cute with their corrections, but it did not work out for them, and so a lot of lost pace there. And then, just the rain and the chaos. My number 3 would be the rain and the chaos that it caused. Watching the McLarens go off track. Watching
Isaac crash out.
Watching guys just crash out during the formation lap and the safety car. Just because some not used to the power behind their cars. Sainz with the Williams was still getting used to the car and the throttle response from the car, and so him not being used to that, spun it out in the wet, and so you just saw a lot of I think the memes before the race of so you're telling me rain and 6 rookies in Australia for opening weekend.
I think that's something we're
going to
get into,
the chaos,
the rookies.
And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. You just had absolute chaos.
I think we only had 1 rookie finish.
Yeah, there's only one. Who knew who it was?
Kimi Antonelli.
It was. And he finished 4th.
Finished 4th on his first race. Yeah. I believe. I can't remember if this is completely accurate, so please don't yell at me if I'm wrong.
Ollie finished too.
Well, Ollie finished, but did he really though?
Yeah, he did. He made it all the way along. So, all right. So that's kind of our recap, our look back at Australia. A lot more obviously went on there, but we're going to try to make sure we keep this. I don't know what we're going to link this out. It might be a half-hour podcast. It might be an hour podcast, but maybe we're going to keep it closer to the half-hour mark.
Probably.
Going forward, we had those intros at the top, so we wanted to get that in. But I think going forward, we'll probably be closer to the 30-minute type of time frame. All right. So moving on from Australia, which was, once that rain hit, we were screaming, we were yelling, we were watching, I
had a friend over, ticker, he was going insane. It was his first time watching an F1 race.
The ticker on the left that said where all the drivers were, it had no chance to keep up. People were dropping down, bouncing up, going all over the place. It was great. It's fantastic. And we had China this week.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Sprint weekend.
It's a sprint weekend. It was. That was pretty good. So what were your 3 big thoughts from the weekend?
I think Ferrari again was really shocking because Lewis Hamilton took Australia, turned it around in the sprint, and got pole and then won. And then when the Grand Prix arrived, it was like they they keep flip flopping back and forth. It's like, okay, good practice. Oh no, not great race. Okay, cool sprint. Oh no, that Grand Prix did not go how we meant for it to go, because they didn't have terrible results. But then of course after the race, everything shook up. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. So what's your number 2 then? Let's just talk about your 3 thoughts.
Oh my gosh, V-Carb, man, they had such a strong weekend. They were looking good in practice. Isaac Hajar was bouncing back from the disaster of crashing on the formation lap of his first F1 race. Like, he qualified 7th. Yuki was 9th. I was so excited for them. And then we walked away without any points after the race. Yuki's front wing just exploded out of nowhere.
That was pretty crazy.
I saw that we were looking at the replays and stuff like that, and we saw it was a V-carb, but there was no information about the driver, so we were like, oh shoot, is that Isaac? Because I think he had also dropped for some reason. And so we were like, oh no, it's Isaac. And then we were looking at it and it was like, wait, no, that's an Alpine in front of him. That's Yuki. His front wing just exploded. Very insane weekend for V-Carb and very sad. Because that was another time they screwed up the strategy again. They were, again, we were all ready for some good V-Carb points, I think. Most people were.
We all were.
Okay, most of us were.
People
most of us that paid attention.
People in your circle might have been.
Okay.
You're a little circle right there.
There's like 4 people in the circle. It's more of a square. And then V-Carb just pitted at the wrong times. We ended up on a 2-stop strategy when everyone else was mostly going 1 stop. I'm pretty sure. And then we ended up with a ton of people in front of us that we just didn't have the time or speed to get past. So, disappointing weekend for
And then what about
V-Carb.
number 3?
Why wasn't Ollie driver of the day?
Yeah, 100%.
Again, it was looking to be like another not great weekend for him. Qualified 17th, but then he finished 10th, and then later moved up. What?
Got the bump.
Yeah. And he drove really well, had I think 3 good overtakes within a few laps of each other.
Yeah.
Of course, the new iconic chow from him. Yeah, that was, and then, Antonelli finished amazing his first race, didn't get driver of the day, and then he went from 8th to 8th in China and got driver of the day. And it was yeah, you're awesome, Antonelli, but this should have been Ollie's. Ignoring the shirt, objectively, that should have been Ollie's. Drove a really great race. I'm not biased at all. Not biased at all, guys.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you on most of those. Actually, I think I had pretty much the same thoughts on my 3. Again, the inconsistency of Ferrari, where kind of like Australia, they started off with some really good pace at the beginning. Hamilton, like you said, had that great qualifying session for the sprint, snatched pole for the sprint, and not only that, but set a fastest lap on the track.
That was
so set the record for the track, and then was able to pretty much dictate the sprint. I mean, it's only 19 laps, but Ran it well. Had a little bit of graining on his left front tire, but managed it either in the sense, like, I know some of the commentators were thinking maybe some of his radio commentary about losing it on the front left was intentionally exaggerated to make the other teams think that he was struggling when he really wasn't.
I think.
But whatever the case, managed it well, got through it. Had a little bit of a challenge from Verstappen. Probably, what was that, like lap 5 or 6, something in that neighborhood, for about 2 laps, and then from there just started pulling away. I think Piastri ended up overtaking Verstappen or Norris. Piastri nipped Verstappen there towards the end, and so I mean, Hamilton and Ferrari looked to be like totally in control, had it down, understood the track, understood the assignment.
And then they made like a minor
it was taking it away, and then I was reading where he said after that they went in, they tweaked the car prior to the actual race, and probably it was because they wanted to have the car set up differently for the sprint because it's so much shorter, and you're trying to just maximize your speed and just, if you're going burn, you're going to burn through a set of tires. There's no pit stops unless you're Yuki Tsunoda, and
what?
Yeah, he was the only one that pitted. Remember, for some reason he pitted. And,
did he pit in the sprint?
Did pit
was he?
In the
I
sprint.
thought I didn't realize that. Was that him? I thought that was him.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Maybe in Hulkenberg, but I was pretty sure it was Tsunoda.
No, Yuki finished 6th in the sprint.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't.
Those are VCarb's only points.
Oh
so
no,
far.
it was Doohan.
That was right. I remember watching the sprint, and I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah, and then he came back out, and you're like, what's the point of this? Anyway,
I don't know if he...
so you're not going to pit. You're just like going to run flat out almost as fast as you can for 19 laps. Like it says, it's a sprint. Once you get into a 57 lap race, you probably don't want the same setup aerodynamically, but whatever happened afterwards, Lewis Hamilton was not happy with how they set up the Ferrari for the main race, and for qualifying for that matter, and he wasn't able to run it like he had through the sprint, so that's a lot different, a lot more of a challenge for him. We saw that obviously. Oddly, Leclerc losing part of his front wing made him faster for a while, until I think finally his either Verstappen had been sandbagging and just conserving his energy and tires, or Leclerc's tires just finally gave out on him. He wasn't able to keep the pace towards the end, and he was overtaken by Verstappen. So Ferrari's like flip of fortune from sprint to race was pretty interesting to me. And then, like you said, the driver of the day, Ollie Behrman, who the previous race double crash out in practices, didn't get a chance to qualify because something broke, started from pit lane, finished dead last, and then to come back this weekend and not only like finish in the points and score, but you talked about like his chow moment when he was overtaking, I think it was Doohan in turn 14, and he did the switchback maneuver on him where it kind of cuts out to wide on the turn a little bit to the outside, and the driver comes over to block him off, and then he cuts in, gets the better line coming out of the turn, so he can get on it faster and harder, and get past them, and gives that chow on his way by to show that kind of recovery and confidence, to like not let the weekend before affect him, which I think we've seen, especially with rookie drivers at Haas in particular, where they struggle. The car is hard to work with. The car is struggling itself. They start having wrecking out, and we saw it with Mick Schumacher when he was teamed up with Kevin Magnussen, where he kept having these wrecks, and like it was just chipping away his confidence for Behrman to go through that the first weekend out.
And then not
Come
let
on
it
in,
get
like you're coming in, you're fresh, you're ready to go, you're excited about it, and to not have literally anything go your way in that first weekend, and then to bounce back from that and have the confidence to not once but twice take that switchback overtake in turn 14 within a couple laps of each other, and then have another couple of overtakes, and then on top of it, this kind of leads into I think my third takeaway for me was the tires like graining in and lasting much longer than we expected.
Oh yeah.
So, in case in point, Behrman getting out there, starting on hards, which you were expecting to try to go the distance, go a little bit longer than other folks who were on mediums.
Yeah.
And then come in for the mediums, which were a faster set of tires. But after they had done that, and they spoke with the principal about what their strategy might be and what they wanted to do with him on mediums, and he said that they were actually going to try to keep him out there for the remainder of the race.
I think we were
and just one stopping it, and when I heard that, I thought there was no way.
Yeah, we were all ready for him to for the tires to stop working, and then he would slide or spin out, or he would have to pit again.
Maybe 24 laps on the hards. I was like, there's no way he's going to go another 25 to 27, whatever it was, laps on mediums. And sure enough, like he and everybody else actually were able to do it and get the laps in, which I think surprised even the teams themselves as they were running, and a lot of them came to realize like, oh, there's other teams are not graining in, they're not losing, they're not having a lot of dig, and they're going to stay out, which means we have to stay out.
We
now.
have
There's no way if we pull in now, we're definitely, because it was a close enough race that if you pitted, you were losing position. Yeah,
Russell was up in second, I believe. No, third, because McLaren had their 50th one too. And George Russell was up in third, and we were talking about it. Like, he was on the radio, like, my tires are gone, man. And we were like, and I was like, man, it's gonna have to pit again. And he's like, but they're not going to, because otherwise I think Verstappen was gonna take that position.
Yeah.
And George would be theoretically out of the running, essentially.
Yeah. And I think obviously the thing that everybody was like just shocked, and we've talked a little bit about it, is post race seeing
man,
Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton,
Pierre Gasly as well.
be disqualified. Charles Leclerc for weight issues. There's a really good article of that if you check it out on actual F1.
Believe it was
Formula1.com. They talk about the fact that basically, long story short, he was out so long on his tires, and they held up well for him, but he was out so long that he wore them down to the point that there wasn't enough weight in his tires, whereas other cars still had enough weight, and they were out. The team was out longer than anticipated, which means they lost more weight than anticipated in the tires, so they did not have the proper balance and weight set up to start the race, because they thought they were going to come in on a two-stopper. They thought they'd have tires that were going to have a little more weight left over at the end, and so you end up with about 1.1 kilogram from just that. And I mean, in the States, that's around 2 pounds.
I was gonna say those numbers. Number means nothing to me.
2 pounds. 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. Yeah, super light.
Wow.
So you split that out over the 4 tires.
But I guess going at 160 miles per hour, that makes all the difference.
It does. And that's the thing too, because you don't want to overcorrect with your weight at the beginning. You want to put as little weight as possible on at the beginning, because even like I think I saw where like half a kilogram could cost you almost 0.2 of a second in pace. Like 0.15 to 0.2 of a second in pace, which over 57 laps, you're looking at almost 11 seconds total. So, and so if you're 11 seconds back, you're now sitting in third place, fourth place instead of first place.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have the weight set up quite correctly. Hamilton's was skid board on the back.
Yeah, there was a specific part of his car that was not the correct weight.
No,
or something.
Thickness. So
That's
he wore it
what
down
it was.
too much because of the setup that they had with the car. Basically, drug it too much in the beginning of the race and wore it thin.
Yeah.
Which then also contributes a little bit to that weight thing. But that was too thin. And then Pierre Gasly, I think, was the other one.
He had I think it was a
His
similar
was the weight thing,
thing.
just like Leclerc. So
yeah.
strange that hit 3 people. But because of that, you had a lot of really interesting promotions. Again, you had Berriman, who had finished 10th. He now jumped up to 8th, which is pretty great for him. And then
Lance Stroll.
What was it? Yeah, Lance Stroll has now finished in the points for both races, which is a little crazy, and scored all of Aston Martin's points this season.
Which is very insane. Like, we've had interesting switch around because I believe Aston Martin was not under the radar last year, but like they were kind of cruising in their midfield.
Kind of scoring sneaky points.
Yeah.
What I call sneaky points.
Like, especially at the beginning of the year when it was looking like another Max dominated year, it was another like Aston Martin in the mid points.
I think you had Alonso scoring like 5th and 6th place finishes, which
he almost
that's when you're
podiumed
getting
in the
into
first
double
couple or
figures.
something like
Huh?
I think he almost podiumed in
And
the
yeah,
first
he had
couple.
like almost or one actual podium, and then a handful of 5th place finishes, and then they went quiet after that for a long while. But that was enough. Like, you get, a handful of 10-point finishes, and now you're sitting in the 40s and 50s at the very beginning. And again, that's hard to catch up to.
Yeah. Like, Lance Stroll is currently above both Ferrari drivers in the World Drivers' Championship, which is weird. Like, yeah. So is Esteban Ocon. He is 7th.
Yeah. So, yeah, now you end up with the situation where Esteban Ocon, like you said, 7th, is got the most points of a Ferrari-powered driver. So that's pretty interesting. A Haas Ferrari driver, more points than either of the 2 Ferrari drivers. And then you throw in Berriman's points, that's 14, and Ferrari has 16 points, I think, at this point, right?
Yeah, so...
Yeah, Haas has 14, and they are right behind Ferrari, who has 17 points. And Williams is tied with 17 points, despite Sainz wrecking out in the first race and scoring no points. He did, because of those 2 DQs, slip into 10. Well, because of the 2, he slipped into 10. I don't know if the...
well, because Ollie was 10th, so he got all the way up to 8th, and Lance Stroll to 9th, and Sainz to 10th. So.
Right, but that's 2 people. That's 2
Is
spots.
It? Yeah. I can't do math, guys. That's why I use the calculator.
So Pierre Gasly, I don't think affected Sainz jumping up. So anyway, because Gasly was out of the point.
I should know math, guys. I should know things. But
but McLaren obviously dominating. I think we expected them to be strong coming into the season. They've shown it. Each driver taking a race so far. I think we'll probably see this continue. We've talked about it. I think we'll probably see over the first 4 or 5 races, whichever driver comes out on top and has a more commanding lead will probably become the favored driver. We won't call it a lead driver, but
they're going
to
play to him more.
Yeah, that's who they'll start favoring. I think they realized they got bit last year. I don't know 100%, but what was it, Hungary, where Norris had to give the win to Piastri?
If Norris had won that race and then Max had just maybe 1 or 2 terrible results,
it wouldn't have needed a terrible result. I think if he had won that race, it would have been much different into the season.
Very different.
Because he would have been even closer. to challenging. So
like, I understand why McLaren did that. Like, we would have had to be podcasting last year for me to go into all that. But I understand why McLaren did it. Oscar had the pace the entire race. He was on track to win it the entire time. And then the team screwed up their strategy. By, I think what happened, they pitted Lando first, and then they pitted Lando first, and then Oscar. So Oscar, like,
yeah, because they did an inadvertent undercut.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Lando ended up in front of Oscar, and then they were like, "You actually have to give that back." And he's like, "You should have pitted Oscar first, then."
Yeah. All right, so. I think our last little bit will be a rookie recap, just like where we see the rookies and how we looking so far. What do you think about this rookie class so far? You mentioned Kimmy, like, basically sat there and did nothing this last race.
Yeah, I think
started
he did.
Technically finished 8th. He got bumped up to 6th.
Yeah.
Because of the 2 DQs, but started 8th, finished 8th.
I think Kimi Antonelli is definitely going to be someone very interesting to watch this year. I think, maybe me personally, there weren't a lot of, I don't want to say positive, but like high expectations coming in this season for Antonelli, because for one, he's, for lack of a better term, replacing Lewis Hamilton. He's filling Lewis's empty seat at Mercedes, which no one can really do, I think. And then also when we saw him practice with Mercedes last year, I think he did like 3 or 4 practices. He wasn't looking super strong in last year's car. I think his first time in the F1 car, I kind of make jokes about this, but we don't need to go into that. His first time in an F1 car, going like 200 miles per hour, taking the fastest first sector, and then he hits a wall. He crashes George Russell's car, and it was funny seeing George's reaction to that. He's just kind of like, "That you broke my car." And then other practices like wasn't really that high up, and then he came in this year and like, I think he's definitely proving he deserves that Mercedes seat.
Yeah, so 4th and 6th, he's got 22 points on this season. He's clearly doing well and I think Mercedes has a good car this year too. Russell has shown that he can be competitive in it. Don't know yet if he can. We'll see if he can squeeze a win out of that chassis, but definitely a competitive car, I think, for Mercedes this year. And Antonelli is taking advantage of it for sure.
I think I was talking about this the other day. I think Hamilton and Verstappen are the only 2 people to have scored higher than Antonelli on their first race.
Yeah.
Because Max Verstappen won his first race. And then I forget about Hamilton. I might be wrong about Hamilton. I know for sure Max Verstappen finished above Antonelli for his first race as a rookie. But
yeah. And so next we got Behrman, the only other rookie actually to score points, which again I think
we've
pretty
gone
impressive
into a lot,
given the fact that he had such a terrible first weekend, and then to bounce back, regain his confidence, shake that off, put it behind him, and score some points for Haas. The very next weekend was a good bit of recovery. Then you got the other guys, Hajar, Lawson Duan, and Bortoleto.
I think
poor Bortoleto stuck in the kick salver for now. I think you basically just have to this season's pretty much just going to be him getting used to a Formula 1 car going those kinds of speeds and getting used to what is the rigors and what's going to require, because it's different from F2.
Yeah.
And then
he was the champion last year.
Yeah, and so I believe. Just kind of get ready for the Audi takeover next season.
Yeah.
And hope that they can deliver a better car for him. doing?
I
mean,
there's a lot.
he kind of came out of nowhere with his selection, I thought, to the seat. But and then Alpine,
They're collecting reserve drivers like Infinity Stones,
Yeah.
guys. Like, and I think we probably all know about the supposed clause in Doohan's contract. 5 races without performance, and he is out, and Franco Colapinto is in. So I think there's been a lot of like memes about that. But then like I think it was Flavio was talking about. Yeah, I think Colapinto's gonna be in the Alpine sooner rather than later.
Yeah, bro, maybe.
Like, I think, jokes aside, it's a little bit like, oh, ouch. But like again, it's F1. It's brutal.
And you've got Hajar in the V-Carb. I think he's been racing better than what his result showed.
Yeah. Again,
he raced this race better than what his results show. He didn't race the first race, but he.
I think.
But he did, if I remember correctly, he did qualify quite well.
7th.
For Australia, right?
Australia, no. I believe.
No?
Pretty sure no.
I thought he.
No. He started
11th.
That is okay. Yeah, that's fair.
For a rookie in the V car.
Yeah.
That's not too terrible.
That's matching Ollie last year in a Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that was actually pretty good.
Until he drove in the rain, and then that went away. But so yeah, I think and then Hadra probably benefit of losing some people in front of him. Moved up a couple of spots with his race result, and finished just outside the points after those DQs. But honestly, still, low teens for him on the finish for China. So, he's been racing well, and that V-Carb, I think, has been driving very well.
It is faster than the Red Bulls right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems that way.
I think there's a little more we can go into with that if we have the time.
No, probably the next time.
Oh, man.
We're at an hour. So...
But this just got leaked today.
Well, you're going to have to... Alright, so, and then our last rookie, and this is what we'll kind of finish up on. Last rookie, Liam Lawson. In the Red Bull, over Yuki Tsunoda, picked over Yuki Tsunoda last year, has not performed well at all. And now all the reports are starting to come out, and like...
Basically everyone but Red Bull has confirmed.
Has confirmed that Yuki will be driving for Red Bull in Japan. Or at least he's going to be offered. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll say no. Maybe he'll take a look at the car and be like, no thanks.
There's so many mixed feelings with this, because part of me is like, yeah, I think Yuki could perform in it because Max Verstappen's clearly performing, but then it's also like, that's Max Verstappen, and if this is what the Red Bull car is really like if Liam Lawson's performance is really how the Red Bull is performing, and the only reason Max can get it where he is because it's Max, then it's like, it's scary for Yuki because they're going to blame it on him. His career could be done.
I don't know. So that's my thing. It's like, I figure this could just be a temporary C to C swap. So swap Yuki and Lawson. And and if the results bear out the same, then they'll have to admit that the car is crap, and they have to fix it.
Yeah.
Now, whether they decide to keep Yuki after that point or go back to Lawson and see what he can do with the updated car, I don't know what they would do. Now, if Yuki gets in it and puts it at like 6th or 7th, back into the points, then they'll be able to turn around and say, well, it was Lawson, the car is just fine, and they'll carry on with Yuki in that seat.
There's so many things to consider with this.
I mean, you're right. You may be right. They may still try to blame Yuki for it, but I think at that point, if Yuki gets in it and the car is still finishing at the back of the pack and he can't get it under control, they've got to admit that they've got problems, at least with that second car. And yeah, maybe Max can like corral it and wrangle it in, but maybe it's set up better for Max.
It
and how
really
he drives.
could be. I think there's been a lot
and
over
they just
the
need to,
years
like,
of that second seat. It's
They just
like,
need to take the time to like actually sit down and fit the second car for the second driver. So, all right, we'll see what comes out from that. I think Japan should be an interesting race. It's one of my favorite races. I really want to get there.
It's an interesting track too.
On my bucket list. It's a figure 8.
I think it's the only one that overlaps, correct?
I have to double check.
There might be one other one that does. But
So,
it's the only figure 8 for sure.
Yep. It's a good race. I know they used to race it in the fall. I'm pretty excited. Moved it to the spring.
Because it's cherry blossom season
this
now.
last year's race in the spring was quite nice with the cherry blossoms out, and they really were out.
They were like playing into that with all the media. It's gonna be so exciting.
So it'll be a great race to check out. We've got some really good options there to view. So it's definitely a race I'd like to get to. But I think, if I had to say, I think we'll probably see a little bit more of the same from Ferrari.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more. They might have some pace to begin with. But I think they're going to end up ceding to McLaren, probably Mercedes. I think they might do better against Red Bull than they did this last weekend. And I think they're going to realize they really got to hit back hard. They've got a weekend off to get back in with the car, try to get it right, try to get some upgrades put in, and hopefully come back in next week, the weekend after, April 4th through the 6th, and get out there and get back in towards the top of the points. It'd be great if they could sneak in the podium. I think it's going to be hard against both McLarens and the Mercedes, but I think they can. There's a chance they could sneak into the podium there, and get like a 4th or 5th to go along with it. Get themselves back in the fight, but it's just going to be an uphill battle all the way at this point. It's going to be a real struggle. I mean that double DQ absolutely hurt, but it's a 24 race season. It's the most races they've had. So there's a lot of season left. They can make up some ground, try and make up some ground, but they're going to have to really work hard to get back ahead of McLaren. I think McLaren will be pretty dominant again. It's going to come down to their drivers keeping their heads and not doing something silly. I think Mercedes have got a good car, like I said. I think Russell can keep contending for podiums. Kimi right there, backing it up with some extra points. And I think the midfield right now is so up in the air.
Oh man, it's
from
going
Williams
back and
scoring
forth.
some good points
They're
already.
being 4th. Alex Albon's still really looking strong in that car.
Yeah.
And I think it was initially a surprise since I think most people expected Carlos to come in from Ferrari and like after winning races and do better in the Williams.
I think most people thought that he was going to be notably better.
But Alex is used to that Williams. He's been there for a good few years now, and he's already, I think, well adjusted to the change, like ready for the changes that were made to the car this year.
And then, hopefully Haas can pick up where they left off in China, stay strong. It's a struggle once you get into that midfield to get a double points finish when you're going against the likes of when you've got McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull typically, and Ferrari, 4 teams. So there's typically all double point finishers.
Right.
So there's 8 positions gone. So that leaves 2 spots for everybody else to fight over. Now with Lawson having struggled, that's helped open up a 3rd spot. And then, you throw in some misfortune and some surprises and hopefully knock one of those other guys out of the top 10. And you can get a Haas or 2 up in there maybe. But looking forward to see what Suzuka brings for us in 2 weeks or a week and a half at this point. And
You want the standings as they are? I did the math earlier, really quick.
What do you mean?
Like just the leads right now.
We did that.
But like I did this. I don't have to.
It's right here.
I know. I just did the math. McLaren has a 21-point lead in the constructors, and Norris has an 8-point lead.
Okay. Great.
Sorry. I'm gonna go to bed now.
All right. Thank you all. If you tune us in and listen, thank you all for tuning in and listening. We hope to do more of this. We hope to get a lot better and have polish this up as we go along.
Never podcast.
But
before,
we're excited for this being our first podcast together and seeing where we can go from here. But with that, y'all.